Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're finally back in business with a showdown between the Beastmen and the Vampire Counts, a matchup that used to be pretty damn terrible for the Beastmen, but of course with their new DLC units, including the mighty Jabberslythe and the Gorgon, pretty much addresses their two weaknesses, right? So historically, the Vampire Count's infantry grind would actually be pretty good against you. They'd be able to really wind you down while their Mortis Engine and their summons really just broke your leadership, but now you can kind of play that game right back at them using the Jabberslythe. So he does have a conditional Mortis Engine here. You can see it's called the Aura of Madness, and basically if their leadership is below 50%, they take Mortis Engine damage. Now, Vampire Count units don't really have the highest leadership in general. Zombies here sitting at 39. I think Graveguard have something in the high 50s, 59. But again, it is percentage based, so it doesn't really matter if they have low leadership. However, a big however or caveat to that is the fact that it's very easy to crush the leadership of zombies and skeletons and these type of units, right? Graveguard not so much, but again, very good at clearing out chaff units, which is very essential at winning this matchup. The Gorgon also is really nice. Historically, you had Gorbles, and Gorbles are okay. I mean, they have nice anti-large, they hit hard, but the problem with Gorbles is they can't really bully their way through units. They get stuck in infantry and can really be abused with cycle charging. However, the Gorgon is very quick and high mass. So for example, if a vampire monster lands on the other side of your army, he can blitz across through your own units, through enemy units, and just go balls deep and really do a ton of damage there. So we got those, and going with the double Wargore, I thought about going with double Gorble, but Gorbles cost over 1,000 gold, and the Wargores, when you strip them down to their basic kit, are like 600 or 700, a little bit more expensive if you bring the Will of the Dark Gods, which I did bring on one. And I was like, you know what, they hit pretty hard, relatively durable, I suppose, with 80 armor. Let's just get them in there and have them help in the grind, and hope that my big monsters can do the trick. Butchers of Kalkengard, again, pretty good against like cavalry and things like that. Teamed up with the Destroyers of Drakewald in the back line. And of course, up in the air, we do have Malagor the Dark Omen. So Malagor, I think, is very good in this matchup. There's only one situation in which Malagor is going to be a big liability, and that is if your opponent, the foul Pwn, brings the Von Karstein Vampire Lord. So yeah, that's a pretty strong pick. And again, Pwn knows my playstyle pretty well. We played together on many occasions. So he kind of mind-gamed me here. I was like, oh, he's going to think I'm going to bring Torox because he's the new toy. But in this case, he brought the Von Karstein Vampire Lord, which objectively is pretty terrible against Beastmen. But if you know your opponent likes to play Malagor, it's suddenly going to become really, really good. So in this case, man, I am in some serious trouble. So anyways, breath attacks coming in. You can see the Jabberslythe getting popped pretty good. It does not have regeneration like its cousin the Gorgon over here. So getting the breath attacks from the Gooses down onto the Jabberslythe is quite a good call. For the rest of his army, he's got double Goose plus the Von Karstein Lord, but thankfully Red Bull has indeed given Malagor wings, and he is going to be running. Storm of the Night pops. Pwn getting very, very aggressive here, but thankfully he cast it a little bit too early, so I should be able to get away here. You can see the Storm of the Night effect is going to be wearing off, and Malagor once again will have 120 speed, which is faster than the 105 and the 90 here on the Gooses. For the rest of his army here, it's going to be zombies backed up by Graveguard. Basic Graveguard are good against like Gores and different things like that, but will struggle against Basic Gores for the most part. And he does have a White King, a Banshee, and a couple Doggos in the backfield to harass and chase things off. So up in the sky here, you can see Malagor the Dark Peacock. No longer a peacock. I gotta stop calling him that. He's flying around looking for his prey. For spells, I brought Pendulum, which is very good against Undead, especially Graveguard. And also the Cygor Summon just to help tilt those monster fights. Scab's Wraith going down, but it doesn't do too much against armor, so not going to be that useful against my army in general. And the mighty Jabberslythe here, going to be Mortis Engineing down these guys. And he's also quite good against Banshees too. There's the first Pendulum going down to the Graveguard here in the back line, but a big overextension from the Jabberslythe. You have to be really aware of this in this matchup. The Jabberslythe is a monster that has those kind of crazy attack animations where he really likes to just do these giant flying leaps and overextend into enemy territory. So suddenly I put myself in a bad situation, and a really beautiful Vargulf summon from the Von Karstein Lord is able to trap my Jabberslythe. So I attack the Hounds here, trying to hope that I will leap out this way. The Gorgon does bounce over. And here the Butchers of Kalkengard will also be entering into combat, trying to get what damage a guy can against the Gooses. So one Goose does take a bit, but a very, very effective engagement for the Pwn Dog as the Jabberslythe does overextend. Really kind of teaching me that I think the Jabberslythe should be engaging from like a side angle, probably, unless you want to get into their back line, but you got to be really careful with that. I also summoned a Cygor to get into the backfield and help out. Malagor is basically just being chased nonstop by the Von Karstein Vampire Lord, which is not a bad idea from Pwn's perspective because it does put constant micro stress on me, and there is another Storm of the Night. So we'll see if Malagor gets caught, what kind of damage he takes, and we will go from there. But it looks like he mostly escaped it, honestly. He's so damn quick that he's able to still kind of get away even with that buff on him. Now in the backfield, we do have the two monsters, the Cygor plus the Gorgon. Circle beating this Goose down pretty good, and even if the Goose tries to run, it's most likely going to get partially cooked because the Gorgon is a very fast pursuit monster. If it's the Gooses are trying to run on the ground, they're not going to be having their maximum speed, and a monster like the Gorgon is probably going to be able to keep pace. But a very good usage of the Dire Pack here by Pwn. absolutely beautiful. He swoops in, jumps on my Gorgon, tons of anti-large damage against light armor, and light DPS, of course, or light armor piercing from the Dire Pack is a really, really good combo there. So I'm trying to get away with the Gorgon, find a nice healing situation. The Jabberslythe has gotten over here. I know the monster fight is going a little bit rough for me. The Jabberslythe plus the Gorgon have taken a lot of damage, but the Gooses aren't, without taking, they've taken some beatings as well. This guy's down to about 40%. We got 90% here on this Goose, but I've also dominated extremely heavily in the ground game. The Butchers of Kalkengard and the Vestigors have been making extremely short work of this undead army. Now, the big issue, of course, if with winning the infantry fight but losing the monster and hero fight, is that terror routes can be a big problem, right? So getting rear charged and terror routed in the late game can pretty much lead to an instant loss. But nonetheless, we'll hopefully be able to keep alive our monsters. So here, Malagor the Dark Omen is going to be flying. I got to come up with another nickname for him, but he definitely reminds me of that old school Red Bull commercial with where it gives him wings and he flies around. Anyways, here, one of my Wargors does go down to the Shank squad here, so the Banshee plus the White King, able to take down the Wargor and really break him. However, the other one, the more important one, is still active in combat, and he does have the Will of the Dark Gods, which gives leadership as well as combat stats to nearby units. So I feel like, against vampire counts, which typically is going to be more of a blobby style of play, I think having one is a decent idea. But again, Pwn ahead on the bounce of power here, and I realized that the Banshee was still very healthy, so I was kind of like, let's go all in here. I didn't bring any magic damage aside from the Jabberslythe, and of course Malagor I think has some, but not on his attacks, but I didn't really bring those. And Storm of the Night goes down as well, so Pwn finally gets me. I thought it had 2 charges, so I felt completely safe. I was flying around, I was cackling, I was being a happy moo here, but he did catch me unaware. I always thought it had 2 charges, but apparently it has 3, and Malagor gets caught and is probably going to get chased off the battlefield. He will be able to create some separation, but you can see as soon as he rallies there for a moment, the Von Karstein Vampire Lord is hot on his tail, and we are in some trouble. On that same note, though, before he does go, I summon a Cygor. Cygor is going to be throwing boulders here at the Sternsbin, and the Jabberslythe and the Gorgon able to make very quick work of these undead heroes. And I don't think the undead are going to want to land here, because if they do, they're going to be getting, potentially circle beaten by the Minotaurs, which have good mass, enough to pin in a big monster like this. We have 63 of the Koroks Man-Rippers, the anti-large specialists, but the Jabberslythe is on death's bed, but somehow, some way, it's holding on. I didn't even think the leadership was super high, but oh, look at that. It was at 2 leadership, all right? And the Will of the Dark Gods from the Wargor actually kept it fighting. You see, little things like that can be super clutch, right? Because now this is still a threat that my opponent has to deal with. Over in the distance, Malagor is escorted off the edge of the battlefield, as is the Wargor. And now my forces are going to be getting ready to charge into the Sternsmen, the foul vampiric infantry, and the Gorgon and the Minotaurs. Should make pretty quick work of these guys. Yeah, should be a pretty good beating there. Here comes the Goose on this guy. The Terror Goose has earned a couple chevrons, and the Gorgon, the mighty Gorgon, also reminds me of that. You guys remember in Anchorman 2 when they have the Anchorman battle, and the History Channel brings a Minotaur? It always makes me think of the Beastmen when I see that. Pretty hilarious. Anyways, the Terrorgeist here does have 2 chevrons, and it looks like the summoned Cygor continuing to do some work. The Von Karstein Vampire Lord and the other Goose were able to break the Jabberslythe, but for the most part, it's looking pretty good for the Beasts now. I felt like I was behind at multiple points in this game, but of course a couple little engagements, some monsters living here and there and being able to squeak away. Quite nice. And you see what I'm saying about the Gorgon? There was multiple points in the battle when the Gorgon was overextended, but due to its speed and mass, it was able to escape. Had I overextended with a Gorbel, like it did its leaping attack animation and went into enemy lines, and Pwn had a really masterful isolation of the backfield, right? It would have died, like 100%. Like, I wouldn't have gotten away. But the Gorgon, with its maneuverability, well, again, Gorbels are pretty quick as well, but really it's the mass on the big beastie. And the fact that he has healing really helps in the sustainability of this matchup. So, Undead coming in for one fell swoop here. You can see the Von Karstein Vampire Lord going in. For Pwn, his best bet is probably honestly just to try and kill the Gorgon and then, use zombie summons to obey the attacking rule that we usually play under. But here you can see the Gorgon going to be getting away. Probably has accrued some pretty good value so far, up to 2,200. Now going to be Tokyo drifting back into combat, moving on to the Goose, which does have the Undeath Resurgent. Man, oh man, how excited are you guys for the Old World announcement? So Games Workshop actually put up an announcement today, which maybe I'll put it in the link or do a separate video on it, but it's announcing that the Old World is indeed going to be coming back, and very much how we knew it. You're going to be able to use all your armies from Warhammer Fantasy. It'll be square bases. It's going to be a combination of 3rd edition through 8th edition rules. So it's just like really like everything we could have asked for the Old World coming back is happening, which is super exciting. Plus there's going to be new armies, which is great, right? Like it's going to be launching with Kislev, and hey, you played Warhammer Fantasy back in the day, you have a Beastmen army, you have a High Elf army, they're all going to be playable, as far as what I could tell from the FAQ there. So anyway, super hyped about that. And I have my Empire army, which is now on round bases, because I assumed they would go back to round bases, and I wanted to use it for other game formats. But you could, there's very easy ways to modify round bases onto square platforms, so should be all good. Anyways, a Gorgon here moving back, going to be cycle charging back in, and again, the mass of the Gorgon proving to be pretty big as he pulls back, probably accruing close to 2,500 to 3,000 value. It has been an invaluable asset this game. And the Von Karstein Vampire Lord trying his best to move through the infantry, but the Destroyers of Drakwald with their poison and anti-large kind of keeping him a little bit slower. Granted, poison has been nerfed. It's not quite what it used to be, but the Gorgon, I figured, let's stay the course, let's fight. And it looks like he will be breaking. Yes, the Gorgon is going to be broken off, but not before the Goose is in, really, really bad shape. Wargor actually able to finish it off, and the Von Karstein Vampire Lord is going to be the last of his people, fighting to the bitter end. Well played, opponent. It was a really fun game. That was actually my first game back. The last one I had played before this was, I think, July 6th, before I had left for Poland. But yeah, the Pierogi Lord is back, and I did indeed eat a lot of pierogi out there, and it was a delicious pierogi. I always say that a little bit funny. So, value accrued. Wargor's not crazy, but again, they provided a single entity presence and also the encouragement aura. The Gorgon with 3,100, which makes sense. Based on Pone's army composition, it had a ton of good targets. Like, this is like, what, 4,000 gold here, and this is like another, like, 2,000 plus, so there was plenty of good targets for him. Minotaurs did really good. They were probably one of the core units to really drag down the infantry, right? The very elite Graveguard, which got heavily outvalued there. Jabberslife kind of got shut down, but it makes sense. It was being focused heavily in the beginning, so you don't expect it to do well. But I really do like this build. I'm trying to think if the double Wargor is worth it. Maybe just go one Wargor with the aura and then like use the money on some other stuff. But I don't know. I liked having two of them. Maybe you could just go Gorbel, because if you look at it, the build has plenty of anti-infantry with the Jabberslife, and these guys, it kind of lacks anti-large. So maybe throwing in one Gorbel in there, I don't know, man. I know I was kind of ragging on them during the game, but it's just, I feel like it's a good build, but it's not like perfect. So we maybe got to fine tune that a little bit. And Taurox can be okay here, but really, really top tier Vampire Count players are going to be able to cycle charge and abuse Taurox pretty hard. So I like having this mobile character, because nobody's going to bring Storm of the Night unless Malagor becomes like the hardcore meta in this matchup. Pone really just mind gamed me there super hard, and you know, I paid the price for it. Well played, Pone. Thank you guys for joining. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We'll be back to our regular schedule of daily videos as well as streams going on all throughout the week and the weekend, and yeah, man, excited to be back with you guys. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the other side, and take care of yourselves.